I flipped the two parts around just to help average out the discrepancies like I was talking about. Yes, you can use a drum sander, but this material is soft and the discrepancies aren't bad, so I'm just using a piece of PVC pipe. Now it's time to put a half lap joint on these, and they go right there. I have two options for making my half lap joint. For reasons of appearance, I want the top part to remain intact, so I'll put the notch on the bottom, and it will be the inverse on this part. The top half of these two will get cut away. The overall finished process, when you watch this in video form, might look like it's easy, logical, basic. But in reality, I'm thinking with as much brain as I can muster to try to think of the steps in advance so that I can nail it, fasten it together rather, in an order that's possible. You don't want to paint yourself into a corner and end up with a part that you just can't fasten. So keep that in mind. If it looks easy, that's because I'm not showing you how much head scratching I'm doing. Here's your basic half lap joint. Nice and easy, hopefully. Nothing too tough here. Don't make it too tight, but you can see that it can go in two directions if you think about it. So I could put it on the top or the bottom, and you can argue amongst yourselves over which is right for this application. I've already made my decision. So my combination square is set to 1/2 the width of the stock. And this is the width of one of the cells. I'll center this block and then trace it. Now I add the thickness of the stock for the cut on the other side, and that's it. For my next trick, I need to get the notch on the lower part of this, but I have to position it with some level of precision. So let's take this away and we'll replace it with the pieces that we want the notches on. And that way we can use this to determine where it sits. Kind of awkward to do. We're going to make sure there's no spaces there and make sure they're all nice and tight everywhere, and you have a sharp pencil. Now that my mark's in place, I'm going to put the X there right now so I don't put the notch on the wrong side of the line. Again, the combination square marks halfway, and now I just add for the width of the material. Alright, so far so good. Now comes the nailing sequence, and I think it's going to be pretty straightforward. The tricky ones are nailing these and these. Most of all this, because I can't get my nailer in there. So this entire center part will lift out for the time being. It's also worth pointing out that I thought about this considerably to make it so that you don't see any fasteners. All of these nails will be hidden against the drawer, and you can't see these ones because they're on the back side, as are those. Back to that theme again, thinking. It's not just something some of us can do, it's something we can all do. It's just that it hurts. You have to push through that. Thinking sucks. But the results speak for themselves. I have everything all held together with these spacer blocks. And the idea here is to use the glue to kind of hold it in place while I nail it. But before I can do that, I have to clamp it so it doesn't move so that I can nail it. Just enough pressure to make the glue grubby. And now just one carefully placed nail. That's the nerve-wracking part. Now I'll let this set up just for a couple minutes, and then I'll put the other two nails in here. And I'll also do the same thing to this one. After that, I'll move to these. Okay, it should be stable enough to take it out entirely. Let's find out. Next, I want to nail this and this, but in order to do that, I'm gonna just take this out entirely. And I have this big, beautiful block of tulip poplar, which we can use as a substitute for this part of the drawer. I miss tulip poplar, tulip wood. It's one of my favorite woods to work with. Look at this. It's nice and soft, straight, easy to work with, very stable, and it was readily available where I used to live, but here, alas, all the beautiful trees on this property, I only have one tulip tree, and you can see it out there. There it is. It's a binary system, but it didn't flower this year. Maybe that's because it's so far away from other tulip trees. The tulip wood tree is also an exceptionally good climbing tree, just because of the way that its branches stagger themselves. It just really makes for a good climbing tree. I've been climbing them ever since I was a kid. Okay, back inside we go to finish. So now this backstop lets me place a little bit of mild pressure just to make sure that all of these fingers are touching against it. Now just a little bit of glue. I'm not going to glue the rest of them. The ones that I can fasten from the outside. It just really won't be necessary. Patience is a virtue, and as I probably don't need to tell you that based on the slow pace of this video. Carefully consider your shots. Align, look from multiple angles, check everything is correct. You want to be a bit obsessive if you want things to turn out nicely. Take your time. It's not the end of the world if one does shoot through. It hasn't happened on this project yet, but typically, and especially when I'm not filming, I move in a reckless manner that ends up with me having to repair something. I'll show you a tool that I would typically use if one shot through.